Hello, and you're very welcome to a podcast which is all about the Irish League. My name is Peter Cinnamon, and there's a brand new sheriff in town up at Warden Street. Oran Kearney has crossed whatever divides the top flight's most northwesterly clubs. He's the new man in charge of Ballymena United. What did he see in the project of the Sky Blues for him to sign on the dotted line? And what is to be expected of him by the higher-ups at the Showgrounds? Elsewhere, Bangor and Shane Andrews heaped more misery on the Glenavon over the weekend. Portadown trounced their fellow bottom six rivals Crusaders away from home, and the Glens and the Reds are able to beat each other across two different games, across two different competitions in 1 week. Let's not put this off any longer. It's not your Christmas shopping after all, and let's get down to business on your latest weekly edition of Kick and Match. It might be flu season, and it's probably mega flu season if we're all being honest. I haven't met one person that isn't complaining about a sniffle, and I'm going to put my hand up there. But we're never sick of the Irish League, are we? And to give us the antidote to any Irish League blues, it's Stuart McKinley. How are you?
I'm good, Peter. How are you?
Doing very well. We had a lovely day together in Lurgan. I know that's rarely said by some people, but we were out watching a rather decent game of football between Glenavon and Bangor. Big thoughts on that coming your way out there because, well, I have thoughts. Two teams that probably aren't getting as much love across the league as they probably, I don't know, let's just say deserve, to give you a little bit of a fluff up there. But Stuart, only one place to start, and that is Ballymena have a brand new manager, as what usually happens after they sack the previous one. And Kel surprise, it's the man everybody thought it was going to be, Oran Kearney.
Exactly, it is the man everyone thought it was going to be. I sort of reflect on this one similar to roughly 12 months ago, a little bit more, when Carrick wanted a new manager and then Glenavon. Quite often there are times when there's a manager out of work and you think he's the next cab off the rank, if you like. Whenever the next job comes up, Stephen Baxter was that man at Carrick, and then Paddy McLaughlin was that man when the Glenavon job came up. I never felt...
I think Paddy McLaughlin was the man for many jobs last year.
Yes, I never felt Oran was likely to go to Glenavon.
No,
Don't
I agree.
ask me why, I just didn't feel that was going to happen. But he seemed a dead cert for Ballymena, didn't he, regardless of any connections. And his lengthy connections and strong connections with Coleraine. But let's not forget he's a Ballymena United player, or ex-Ballymena United player, and also a very capable manager. So once he's out of work, you think he won't be out of it particularly long if he wants to come back in, and that's what's happened.
You were right in saying don't forget, because I had forgotten, if I'm being totally honest about that. I've forgotten many things, but Oran Kearney in a shirt of sky blue was one thing I didn't remember. Obviously, massive connections to Coleraine throughout his two spells with the club, and then a third moving upstairs, which didn't really work out or last that long. And then he was on the free market, and you're probably going to say, based on his previous form, and I would say for a while he was touted as a man to take over at Windsor Park eventually due to his connections with that club, and you never know, that still may eventually be his destiny. I think most importantly to the board of Ballymena, who has been able to have long-term success within this league. He was able to bring Coleraine high up the division, never really got the big one, but did get a number of cups. And you'd probably say, with all this investment that reportedly the board are putting in to this side, I think they would very much shake your hand for 2019 Coleraine, 2017 Coleraine. And I appreciate under his tenures there was ups and downs. The downs not even being anywhere close to the current medium, let's just say Ballymena are in, because we all know what the lows have been there over the past 5 years. But if there's one thing they're getting from him, or at least they hope they are making a purchase of with him, is some form of stability, and with that potential growth upwards in the league.
I'm not saying you're stating the obvious, but I think that is what you hope for. But anytime you sort of go for a change of manager, Oran's a rarity in management in that he's never been sacked, and pretty much for the most time of his managerial career, his stock's always been on the rise. When you think from Limavady to Coleraine, where he did everything but win the league, yet he went very, very close. Who knows what might have happened only for COVID in 2020, when Coleraine were quite well placed. And he was a former manager of the year for that reason. And yes, like you said earlier on there, he was suggested not long ago that he would have been in the mix had David Healy moved on from Linfield. And you go back to St Mirren, a very, very good record there. The issue there wasn't a sacking, it was he was originally travelling back and forward to Northern Ireland on days off during the week, and all that was fine in his first season, but the club weren't supporting that arrangement anymore when he was going into his second season, and the relationship broke down because of that. But he kept him in the Scottish Premiership, and that was a big step up for him, and he did very well. It's now boils down to what are the expectations at Ballymena, because the league is a little bit different. Yeah, you're talking about sort of Coleraine model of 2017, 2019. The league has changed from that with Coleraine and Larne, with big investment, and now they're expected to be in the top six. And breaking into that for a team like Ballymena is tough. So what are the realistic hopes? It would be interesting to know exactly what they expect, but I wouldn't be thinking that they're looking at top six this season.
I would agree with you. I think at the very start of the season, I felt as though it was going to be top six or bust. That comes with any manager's ambitions, or at least his tasks from his board at the start of the season. We would like you to achieve this, and it was clearly, based on what we've seen, it was more than just a gentle nudge. And Ballymena, I think, will want to get into the top six, and then you go from there into trying being regulars in Europe. I don't think with the money that's being pushed towards the squad that, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I'm yet to meet anybody from Ballymena that goes, we should be up near the top of the league, like a Larne have done and like Coleraine have done, particularly this season. They want to build, they want to grow, and they're probably just sick of being also rans. Clearly what happened there 2 seasons ago, or let's say it's 2.5 seasons ago, where they were minutes potentially from going out of the league altogether. That should be ancient history to them. But he's got a bit of a challenge on his hands here. He's got a uneven squad, a team that he hasn't put together, but there's commitments here to a number of these players, and the pot is not infinite. So, like any manager coming into a team, you're going to have to work with what you've got before you can start bringing in the pieces which you want. Is there talent in this Ballymena side? Absolutely. And it's a funny week for them where they fall to Dungannon, but are also able to shock Larne in the cup. Maybe this says that what this side needs is a fresh vision, a new vision, and maybe that'll be able to galvanise this team, get it across the line where it's maybe in the mix come the end of the season. Because remember, 7th is still pretty much as good as 6th unless you're really desperate to play your games at home. Look, Cliftonville were the first team to break that duck and get all the way to Europe, so there's still a lot to play for. And slipping into the semi-finals of the League Cup is, well, what a little chocolate on the pillow from Caldwell and co that was.
I'm looking at the Ballymena squad, and I'm not saying they've underachieved, although you definitely could suggest that.
And I will suggest that.
Yeah. The age profile of the squad is really good. You're looking at the main man, you could say, is Ben Kennedy, who's 28. What age do you want to get a player in at to get the best out of him? That's probably around about the sweet spot. And then they've got a good bit of experience in there as well, with the like of Josh Carson, Stephen O'Donnell, Matthew Clark. Darragh O'Connor's only 28 as well. So it's a really good age profile of a squad, but results-wise, I think we could say that they've been spectacularly inconsistent in the last couple of seasons. Last season we're looking at 13 wins, 16 losses in the league, and am I right that they occupied every position? From first to 8th or something like that.
Were they the only team outside of Linfield to be first
top
at
the
any
table?
point?
Yeah. It's just a massive roller coaster ride there. Under Jim Irvin, again, what did they what did they expect? Top four, I think of as of now, is going to be that top four this season and possibly quite a little bit into the future. The top six was nailed on until last season, until Dungannon broke it. So it's very difficult for any team to go and break into that top six. So if that is what you're pinning your expectations on and deciding on the manager's future, it's top, like you said, top six or bust. I think it's unfair and a little bit unrealistic, and to put that pressure on managers right side of that bracket. Because you look, even last season, Cliftonville didn't make the top six. Did that put pressure on Jim Magilton if he hadn't made it through the European playoffs? I don't think so. Because I think there's probably an element of reality at that club. Whereas I'm not sure that there's been the case maybe with this one with Ballymena.
Well, if we're then to look outside the top four, which I think this is where I believe maybe that report card review comes from, and that could do better when it came to Jim Irvin's time, particularly this season. Outside of those top four, if we were to rank it in order of projected, we don't know how much these players are earning, we don't know what the overall wage bill is, and the amount of money you spend in a player's pay packet means naught when it comes to the league table, right? But clearly you spend money on players, you hope that you're going to get a better team, results, blah, blah, blah. Would you argue that Ballymena is maybe not projected to be in the top six of wage spend?
I would suggest that they probably would be that way.
They might be fifth.
Yeah.
But
Because
it would be between maybe Cliftonville or them, some might suggest.
Yeah, well, I think Dungannon are busting that, aren't they? There's no way Dungannon's got the fifth highest budget in the league. I would very, very much doubt that. But it's the old once you cross the white line, isn't it? You can pay out whatever you like in wages, but you're not paying for the actual performance. You're paying in the hope of performance, which may not always come.
I guess you got to look at it from a point of view of why has and is Oran Kearney now got the big scarf of sky blue. Well, you look at the stability of Larne, his time at Coleraine, it seems to be over. Well, it is over, but I don't see that marriage happening again. There is all this talk of him not being able to go full time. So in what way does this Ballymena job work with his other commitments work-wise? We don't know. But if you're to maybe knock out the top four, maybe Glentoran or Linfield, if they came calling, he might go, maybe worth it to go full time. But outside of those jobs, Ballymena probably was the most attractive. It works for him from a geography point of view. And this is a manager who has had a budget. I know there's budgets throughout the league that might be fairly good, that you're able to bring players in. But that has to be an attractive proposition. Here I come, being able to build this squad. Clearly comes in with a lot of authority because of his stature within the league. And he is going to be able, in the same way Jim Irvin was able to come in and shape the way the club is run to his wants. I think Kearney comes in with exactly the same, if not more, authority as the new man, the way things previously went. And he's able to shape the side. I just did not see any other job from maybe a historic stature point of view. You could maybe say Glenavon. Maybe, I don't think anything's going to happen to Cliftonville. Cliftonville clearly would be higher than Ballymena on that side, but we all know what's going on there with behind the scenes and how that's maybe stuttering things when it comes to investment. Ballymena are a very exciting project. It works for him personally, and he gets to stretch his muscles. I think he's looking forward to setting out there and trying to prove that he's a big dog again, because there was plenty of highs with Coleraine, but again, there was a few bits of frustrations within his time at the club where perhaps people didn't feel as we couldn't get across the line and maybe take them to the next level. He gets to start afresh here with Ballymena, and he gets to prove maybe this is how good I really am.
If I was a club chairman, I doubt I would ever appoint a rookie manager. Every time a job comes up, I'm looking to see who they're going to appoint, and I'm thinking, who's out there with a CV, with a track record, and somebody that's done something and been successful. And Oran is that. And there's so many things that tick boxes that make him the right fit and the club the right fit for him. Um, like you say, there's ambition there, and he has been successful in the past. Um, and again, I'm not always one to think that you just go directly end game, sack a manager when things aren't going quite well enough. I don't think Ballymena were in a really bad position. It's not like they were losing every game. There's teams this season have been a lot worse, but often it does bring change, and I think we all expect to pick up at Ballymena. And I think the fans will be optimistic and they'll be excited as well. Oran's track record is cup success, and the Ballymena have a League Cup semi-final to look forward to, and they'll be thinking that the European playoffs are realistic too. So much as I say that I don't think the top six is realistic for them in the short term anyway, cup success can be, definitely. They're in that League Cup semi-final. They've won it not that long ago. They've been in a couple of Irish Cup finals in the not too distant past as well, without quite getting over the line there. So it might not take too much to just push that a little bit further on. And then it becomes a case of, once you get a little bit of cup success, maybe does that lead to a little bit more, which happened with Larne, the County Antrim Shield run of 3-4 years in a row winning that, sort of pushed them on to the league success, which they were always likely to do anyway. That was always the target. Not saying Ballymena are suddenly going to go and win the league, because that contradicts what I've already said. But cup success can definitely be a target and a possibility for them, and where that leads to it would be interesting to see if they can just put that foundation in place, because they've got a manager who's proven. And if you go back 2 managers ago, they went and got David Jeffrey, at the time the best manager who was out of work. They tried a different route and tried the rookie in Jim Irvin, who I think did okay. And I think Jim will get another job somewhere along the line, probably not too distant future. But now again, they've gone back the way and gone, best manager out of work. There he is. Give him the job.
You're right. Looking through the squad once again, I've said in previous weeks, I don't know how it all links up. And they've had a few injury blows. O'Connor hasn't been starting week in and week out, and he was a pretty nailed on kind of flagship signing of the summer. You mentioned Ben Kennedy there. It's been a very frustrating 18 months for him, where he's flashed. We know all the goals he scored last year, particularly at the start of that nice run they had. A lot of them were penalties, but he still was there making things happen. And Annie Scott's been out. Was it Matthew Clark was out there at the weekend? We'll have to see if that's going to be anything more than just a wee niggle beyond that. But this midfield, I love it. Carson's you can call upon, you can Jarvis. I really, really, really like Patrick McElhenney. He might not be a full 90 minutes player at this point, but the time that I've seen him, he really shone in there. And perhaps you get a setup where you do have on one side O'Connor, if you get a fit Scott on the other side, mix in a few young players, which they have, and the likes of Hood and Corbally, great. But I'm just going to repeat myself, as I've done in the past few weeks. The big sign is going to have to be a striker. Whoever that is in January could really just change things around this season. And it's probably a good time to get a striker in, because they're going to need to really have that key big investment up top that they can build around. And then they can use the next 6 months to hit the ground running next year. I think top 6 is still in their wheelhouse. Maybe even 7th is probably good enough. We'll see how they do in the cup, but this is almost a tryout for next year. In he comes, decides what players work, what players don't, and then you can build towards. You said it. It's a nice mix of youth and experience, and if you can get it working, I think they're maybe, and I would maybe suggest they are 5th or 6th when it comes to wages. I think they can be up there, but there's plenty of good teams in this league.
There are, and that's why we've when I was on with you before, we talked about that top four, and then from 5th to 11th, anything can happen. And at the minute, Glenavon are a little bit stranded in 12th. So yeah, anything could happen from 5th to 11th still. I don't see that opening up much. Although Dungannon have put themselves into that bracket and done quite well, but Ballymena aren't a million miles away.
7 points off.
Which is nothing really, especially when you've got split to come and points are sort of cut in half almost. But they're bringing in Oran at a good time. He's got 2-3 weeks to start building up and looking at what's out there before January. And now a case of, do you want to go and play for Oran Kearney, a guy who's been pretty successful in the league before, and that might just attract a slightly different type of player. And yeah, you say striker. I say every window, but particularly January, every manager in the world would take another striker if they could get one in the door, because that makes the difference, is putting the ball in the net. And if you can upgrade at the top end of the pitch, you're going to want to do it and get yourself an extra few goals, an extra couple of wins, an extra couple of places up the table to qualify for Europe or win something.
I think they're going to have to try and get better at home. Been a mixed bag, actually, over the past 7 days at home. I don't think any team really fears going to that Ballymena Showgrounds. It's a very much an open pitch. It's a bobbly, poor-looking pitch based on what you could see on Saturday. But it all started quite nice. You know, who claims they can't do anything at home? They beat informed Larne in the League Cup, which has put them on this pedestal to potentially do something in the cup and potentially maybe get themselves into a final, get themselves into then the European playoff final. So all to play for out of all the results this week. And I wouldn't say there's any mega shocks, a few surprises. Across 7 days of football, 2-0 against Larne is probably one of the bigger ones for me.
Yeah, it is that home form that they're going to have to try and sort out. Even Glenavon have got a better record at home than Ballymena.
Ouch.
We talk about it's the well-trotted out line from managers. Oh, this is a very difficult place to come. Well, Seaview's traditionally a difficult place to come, as is Carrick, as is Ballymena. They're the bottom three in the home table, so it's maybe not that difficult a place to go, either of those three. So if teams are going to Ballymena,
it takes a while for people to catch up.
If people are going to Ballymena with pretty big hopes of taking 3 points, that's something that they do need to turn around really, really quickly, because that's where you can make the difference. That's why Glenavon have creeped up a little bit, because of that home form and winning the 3 in a row before last Saturday. So yeah, it's one thing you've got to try and sort out. That's why Portadown were pretty strong last year. They had one of the best home records in the league. Yeah, if you can make that a fortress. And you only have to go back a short time to they beat Linfield at home, which was a big result at that time. And then like you say, they beat Larne at home last week. So if they can start putting that right, a few more points on the board at home, get themselves up the table a little bit, and then that 7th place for the European playoff definitely comes into sight.
We know they can do it under the lights. That's where they've got these victories against Linfield and more recently Larne. Of course, we'll have to circle back to that Larne result. But can they do it on a cold day at Warden Street? Not in the afternoon at the minute. They're pegged back there by Dungannon Swifts, who just go about their business nice and quietly. And it's a game where they take the lead, they shoot themselves in the foot, and then they go and smash it back. And I think that goal, which ended up being the key one, the Glennie one, if you watch it back, it kind of highlights what I would describe as maybe a frustration that I would say when I watch Ballymena. They're a very passive team, or they have been a very passive team. There's rarely much aggression or up and at them or just intensity to them, and I think that's one thing that Oran Kearney's going to have to come in and sort. I mean, the ball's dropping for a bit of a while before it falls onto the boot of Glennie. once it's there, it just didn't seem like anybody was trying to chase that down or put him off in any way. It's like they were all ball watching, and it's those little moments that are going to let you down. And perhaps they are a team that get that bit of concentration when their backs are up and they're against a great side, but they need to be like that more and more. I was there at that game where they drew with Crusaders, and it was little bits of mistakes that let them down there. And I would say that game against Dungannon, little mistakes that let them down again. Now, they could have been gifted a draw because that is a howler of an own goal from McGinty, but he did score at the other end. So, 50-50, all's even.
Is it not just the case of the class of Adam Glennie? I thought that was what you would be putting it down to, because I know you're a big fan.
No one needs to polish that. Isn't Adam Glennie good debate quite like me? All right. But yeah, of course, he's a left back and go up and down. Looks like he barely runs out of breath. And he's up at the other end and he's throwing his left boot at it and pumping into the back of the net. It's, this is what Dungannon do. They keep up. In fact, they're the complete opposite, the complete antithesis of what I describe Ballymena. They're always intense. They're always up for it. They're always at them. And sometimes they're so intense they're knocking into their own net.
Yeah, they're just intent on putting the ball in it.
Yeah. Gotta do it. So, you kind of have to wipe the slate clean now for Ballymena. I think that result is a bit of a kicker to happen. You're hoping maybe for a bit of a dead cat bounce in the league. They don't get it, and it puts Dungannon there in 27 points. Same amount the games, 18. I mean, it's all over the place, the amount of games played here. And then Ballymena played the same amount there. They're 7 points behind. So that's a nice little cushion on the Swifts trying to hold on everybody else below them. And they're probably one of the teams that, a bit like Larne in previous years, when everybody says something good about them, everyone just nods along and go, yeah, no, they're pretty good. Like, they lost to that team X amount of weeks ago, but overall they're good and they're getting results, and they probably don't care, will they? They probably feel as though they wish they could do better in the cups, and they'll want to go as far as they can in the Irish Cup again this year after winning it next year. But it's at 5th. That's where they are. That's where they're sitting. And I wonder, coming into January, will they want or will they have the ability to strengthen? Because I don't see that being a team, despite all its quality, being gutted.
I think Rodney did most of his work in the summer. And possibly that's why it took a few games to get a bit of a blend. Because they obviously didn't start particularly well. If they had started a little bit better, they could be in the top 4 by now. So it might be a case of, well, we've done okay, and he maybe doesn't need an awful lot of new blood in there. Given that they've got to where they are, they just need a little bit of consistency. Even the last few weeks, it's been win, loss, win, loss, win. And if they just can start stringing wins together, who knows where they could end up, because that top 4, they've dropped a few points, haven't they?
It's not locked in just yet. Highly likely that it will be come the end of it.
I know I'm contradicting what I've said.
Wobbles. There's wobbles.
I know I'm contradicting what I've said about that top 4, but obviously Glentoran have had a bit of a slide form wise, and they'll have been relieved to get that point on Saturday. But you still expect them with the strength they have to put a bit of consistency together quite soon.
Well, I was chatting to Matthew Brown, birthday boy at the time, last week, and I said, you're going to host Cliftonville on Tuesday, then you're going to host them on Saturday, and I reckon you're going to split that one way or the other. One team's going to get an advantage in the other, and the other team's going to get it in the other game. Kind of right, both were draws. Glentoran are able to win on penalties, which is great for them. They get through to the next part of the cup. But Cliftonville seem to have learnt their lesson. They come out all guns blazing on Saturday afternoon in the first half. They get 2 goals to the good. Massively sloppy play from Glentoran, and that pretty much giving it up, and it creates a mountain for them to climb, where it looked as though they were running ragged when it came to attacking Cliftonville. And as much as Cliftonville were at 6-7s, Glentoran just could not put that ball in the back of the net enough times. They had the chances to win this game, but in the end, it was just too little too late. and maybe they're thankful for a point. Probably Cliftonville are the team that is more thankful for it. But this Glentoran side, there's just not good mojo coming from them at the minute. I know this is famous. Everyone predicted this. There's chat online about Devine. He was ill there on Saturday. I know how you feel, brother. But this Glentoran team are returning to the mean, and results on Saturday do not help the vibes in East Belfast, does it?
I can only really go off what I've seen, sort of on streams and live. I was at the game when they played Glenavon a few weeks ago, and they were really poor. To be fair to Declan Devine, he didn't try and sugarcoat it. Admitted that they'd sort of maybe gone with the wrong formation and then tried to remedy it second half. Having said that, they did create a couple of gilt-edged chances, which if they put in the net, it's a very, very different outcome. But overall, they weren't great. A couple of games I've seen them on the streams. They were a bit below par as well. Certainly not the team they were at the start of the season. So it just seems that they've sort of hit the long grass a wee bit, and maybe just needed something like Saturday, a response in the second half, and that could be a bit of a spark for them. And then Cliftonville, again, only go off what I've seen live. The contrast between them in the first half and second half against Portadown 2 Saturdays ago was huge. It's not that they were bad in the first half; there was just something not quite there with them. And then in the second half, Jim Magilton himself said that at halftime, it said we've got more gears and we have to find them, and they did. They went through a couple of gears and they played pretty well second half. So
it did help that the home side stopped marking players.
There was a little bit of that for sure.
But yes, I agree. I was watching lyrical about some of those young players. And look, Cliftonville are somewhat limited by their overall experience and ability, but they're a very fit, nippy team, aren't they? And I think fit, nippy teams are going to capitalise on mistakes like they did against Portadown in the second half last week and the first half here against Glentoran.
Well, they've got 3 big, strong centre halves, and if they can just do their job, they've got players ahead of them that can go and do things. Everyone at the minute's starting to talk about Joe Sheridan, and I expect that to carry on and continue.
Yeah,
I hadn't seen an awful lot of him.
Have we decided he's Joe rather than Joseph?
I believe so, yes.
Good. That's because that's the awkward thing, you'll know, right? I'm the radio boy. I have to type. You read the list, and you don't want to be giving people's nicknames out of nowhere. And I'm like, is it Joe? Is it Joseph? Because it's written Joseph because it's all fancy on the team sheet that you get. So by the end, Joe Sheridan. You don't want to be David Jeffering it, do you?
No.
Joseph Sheridan was tremendous.
No, but when you know the context of David and the Anthony Gorman, that came from his mother praising David for giving him his full title. Maybe we need to ask Joe Sheridan or Joseph's mother if it's Joseph or Joe, because I find that's where you will get the accurate information. Well, but young Mr. Sheridan,
Granny Sheridan would have enjoyed that performance on Saturday.
Yeah, I think we'll all start to enjoy watching him, however long he's here, because, like I said, I hadn't seen an awful lot of him before last weekend, but since then, a lot of people have been talking to me about him and saying he's one of the brightest prospects around at the minute, and that there's a high likelihood that he won't be in the Irish League for a long time, that he will end up going across the water. And certainly there's glimpses there of it being cross-channel material, and the fact that he's in the team every week tells me that he must be rated, because Jim Magilton won't hand out first team starts for the sake of it. You've got to earn those. And between him and Kevin Hawthorne, Jim's been talking quite highly of both of them. And again, he's not someone who just says things for the sake of it or to build players up. Those players will have had to do something for him to be talking about them like that, not the opposite way around. So he's got a lot of faith in them, and I think the players around them are showing that they've got a bit of faith and belief in them as well by giving them the ball and expecting them to do something with it.
Well, I'm starting to see a bit of belief in this Cliftonville team. I saw it in the flesh there last weekend. Difficult weekend there because they have to do it without Heel. Was Kern also out for that? But they've got plenty of players, plenty of names, but they're just I think there's lacking that real top end quality where they're going on a run. Let's be fair, but I just don't see them being able to really continue it and really knock on the door of the top four. But I could look very daft soon if the job Magilton and Co are doing continues. You talk about that back line. I love Owen Casey and Jack Kearney. Talk is Kearney could be away to America and Casey could be away to Coleraine. Disaster if that happens in January.
Kearney would be the bigger loss for me. I'm not saying that Oran Casey
I don't
wouldn't
know.
be a loss.
I like him.
Yeah.
Kearney
has been weighing in with goals as well, and if you've got a centre half that's scoring goals, that's worth an awful lot. If they happen to lose both of them, it's hard to see how they replace them. Sean Leopard's obviously there, a lad who came with a lot of promise and got an injury early on, which was a big blow. So if he can step in and perform like he did at Institute, because there's a very, very good reason why Cliftonville signed him in the first place. He did very well at Institute. Maybe they can cover those areas, but any team that's playing that system that Cliftonville play with three at the back, if you take two of them out, it's going to be very, very tough.
But it's also, they're so mobile, they're so physical, those two players. But as I've talked about before, they move from one of the two wide centre backs of the three, and all of a sudden they're in like a number 8 position because they've just ran straight, and the nippy passy players work round. A very interesting team to watch. Cliftonville are. Glentoran are anything but that. And I must say that the frustration that their fans are seeing is because this team is just very uninspiring, aren't they? They are a bit tedious to watch. The midfield could have a bit more grit. The back line is clearly a problem that needs addressing when it comes to just the makeup there. And as much as I'm not here to talk or listen to much panic when it comes to the managerial position, they're a team who feel off the back of a really nice start, they're whittling that away with quite stagnant performances.
Yeah, but they shouldn't really be like that because they've got quality in there.
They do.
Joe Thompson, Cammy Palmer, Jordan Stewart, just to name a few there in that midfield. 3 cracking players. I've really liked the look of Cammy Palmer since he first came into the league. So they should be getting the ball down, creating things, and then they've got players up front who you think you can put the ball in the net with Hoban, Jenkins, etc.
Fisher's back, he's alive, that's good.
Yeah. So, but then you just wonder, are they just going through a bit of a spell and there's too much quality for that to carry on for too long? Which may well be the case. We could be sitting here in another 3-4 weeks' time, early January, going, well, Glentoran are on a good run, aren't they?
Wow, what a 6-0 victory over that team.
It wouldn't surprise me in the least.
It would. It would, to me, based on what I'm saying. They've got width at the back, and they've got great delivery from there, and you get Stuart on the ball, things happen. And if you get the ball to Hoban in the box, things happen. But it just feels like from one end to the other, it's actually their spine, which is what's letting them down. But talking about unremarkable, mundane, what is there to say about Larne Linfield? We've seen this movie before.
Yeah.
I watched back the highlights and I struggled. It was 2 minutes.
It often happens, doesn't it? It's the big build-up. Top teams in the league, teams that you think are going to go and compete for the title, and then they end up just cancelling each other out. And it's the old is fear of losing overtaking the desire to go and win the game. And that was possibly the case. Is it a better result for Linfield going away from home and getting a 0-0? Probably. But it wasn't the worst result at the same time for Larne. Probably as they came on, and it was looking more likely that was going to be the outcome. Both teams were probably happy enough to settle for it. And it certainly looked that way.
Yeah, Linfield might be patting themselves on the back, going, "Oh yeah, we go away to Inver Park and we don't lose. That's good for us." But at some point, they're gonna have to try and stick a dagger in the heart of this side. They are one game behind. They're 7 points off them, so you give them a win, and I don't think you can give anybody a win at the minute based on the results of some of these sides. You make that only a 4 point difference. I'm not saying it's an absolute killer blow here, but it just feels like in the previous years, Linfield not being able to finish off Larne was some of the key mistakes, the key diversions, which kind of moved them towards or away from the Gibson Cup. On this occasion, we'll not analyse it too much because there's not a lot to analyse bar than a few long balls and half chances, but Matthew Tipton's on this podcast a couple of weeks ago, and he highlighted that ultimately a lot of this full-time football means you have organised teams who are hard to break down, therefore teams can't break them down. And I think that game highlights that, and we have talked too much in this podcast over the past 3.5 years around drab nil-nils and draws between Linfield and Larne. We already talked about Larne there in the League Cup. Linfield took care of business against Newry as was expected, but they did make a bit of a pig's ear of it as well.
I ended up at that game, and it turned into a cracking game in the last sort of 25 minutes. When Linfield went 2-0 up after 65 minutes, you think game over. And I was about to start writing to that effect when a minute later Newry go up and score, make it 2-1. And we're going, oh, this could get interesting again. And even when Linfield went 3-1, it got interesting again shortly after. A lot of it was down to Newry just throwing everything at it and battling like mad, and not giving up. And credit to Stuart King. But going back to your mention of Matthew Tipton, very, very good analysis of things, because we are starting now to hear more and more managers being quoted on how our work out of possession and how good we were out of possession, and that is being organised defensively, disciplined, structured, and stopping other teams scoring goals. But that is what you have to do to try and win things. It's not always making it pretty on the eye for the viewers. But I would agree with Matthew in those terms. We all would like to see the flair players and the more talented ones, and then you wonder, it's the quote then of these players can have the ability coached out of them. So, is the full-time thing working in that way as well? Are these players maybe not given as much freedom while their mates at the back are being pretty well drilled?
Things like organisation, defensive stability. I bet fans of Crusaders would have liked a bit of that on Saturday as they get royally thumped by Portadown at home. I know the Crusaders' home form is it maybe bottom of the league? It's really been their Achilles heel this year, and as much as I was getting all excited about how maybe this Crusaders team is going to get a load of goals knocked in against them, but they've got enough going at the other end that they're going to be able to maybe outscore them or get the goals in these tight games. They look to be totally blown away by a Portadown team who looked like everything clicked and worked for them. It's a result that fans of the Mid-Ulster side will probably feel one was maybe coming, or two they really, really needed.
Yeah, Crusaders, yeah, they've one win and one draw at home this season. And again, it's just totally flipped that it's a really tough place to go. Crusaders traditionally is an awful place for an away team to try and go and get a result. And now everyone's going there and picking up points. It's just that it just seems to be like a soft underbelly, like say defensively, and it's just so un-Crusaders like. And it's not something you expect. I did possibly expect them like yourself. They score 3, we'll score 4 because they do have that ability going forward. But it's not really working like that. We have seen the ability they have up front. Brooks, Braden, Dunlop. I don't think there's any doubt in that quality. Is it a case of their experienced players are still out injured and they can't then make up for that? But it's, somewhere along the line, it's got to change.
Fraser Bryden's got his flaws based on all the goals that he's scored this season for the Crews and a struggling team. Um, does Eamon Fife deserve his flaws? Like, it feels like every other week I'm either hearing on the radio or I'm seeing online Eamon Fife scores a goal. He's having a very, very good season in a Portadown shirt.
Oh, he's delivering. He's scoring goals, and that's what you want from a striker. And this is a guy who last season he was playing sometimes on the right, sometimes he's playing off Houbacan. This season,
Yeah,
he's playing.
Is he a striker? I guess you're scoring goals. You can be whatever you want to be, mate. But
Yeah,
he's playing as a striker,
he
isn't he?
is. He is. Yes. What is his best position? It's not goalkeeper. I think we found that out. As much as he did quite well, um,
Oh
you
yeah.
don't want to have him in goal every week. So yeah, he is playing as a number 9, and he's doing what you want the number 9 to do. He's putting the ball in it, and it, that's just the simple breakdown of it. And he does deserve credit for it, because he's got, what is it, 8 goals now this season. And at this stage of the season, that's not a bad total.
Massive assist from the defender on that first goal. I don't want to see that again. But another guy seemed to have a great game, and a player who's been catching my eye recently. He got 2 there on Saturday. This fella Ben Wiley. Ports have a midfielder who can score. That's pretty nice.
Well, he's scoring at the minute. I did an interview with Ben at the start of the season, and he said that the one thing he wanted this season was to score more goals. It took him.
Are you taking credit, Mr. McKinley? Did you inspire him on?
I wouldn't have thought so, seeing as it took him until November, a couple of weeks ago against Carrick to get his first goal, and now he's went and scored him 3 goals in back-to-back away games. So full credit to him. Ben probably would admit this himself, that he's been something of a slow burner at Portadown. You could see the ability that was there last season, but it was in patches. Sometimes he was very, very good, and other times maybe wasn't quite in games. This season, he's hit a level of consistency. He's been playing well nearly every week. And again, by his own admission, he does get frustrated quite quickly. And that's something that Niall Curry has said that they're trying to just take out of his game, just to get him a bit more focused, that things aren't always going to go right for him. And you could see even last Saturday against Cliftonville, when he missed the chance, he's putting the shorts up, a bit annoyed that he'd missed. And then he makes up for it last Saturday by scoring 2. So the ability is definitely there in Ben Wiley, and he's taking his chance with Shea McCartan out of the team to really go and put a marker down. Even if Shea McCartan does get himself back fully fit, Ben Wiley's going to be hard to shift out of the team.
Seems like it. Crews, that's a 3rd loss on the bounce for them. So they're now back down to 10th. They've kind of been in that area for the past while. That's a key victory for the Ports, actually, because they're now on 22 points. That puts them now 5 points above Crusaders. Now, Crusaders have a game in hand, but that's not a bad place to be when you're looking down. They're above Ballymena, but by 2 points. Ballymena have a game in hand on them. Carrick have 3 games in hand, but it's 6 points. So that's a vital victory to try and hold them back as these other teams try and potentially roar back up the league. Unfortunately, for Glenavon, their opportunity to do something similar, or at least claw points back against the teams above them, with the Crews losing Ballymena. Well, Ballymena are far away at the minute, but Crews and then eventually Carrick Rangers losing. This is their chance at home to get points against Bangor. You and I were at this game. They looked so good for 30 minutes. But Peter Campbell comes off with about maybe 20 minutes on the clock. Then there's the penalty, which we can talk about. And it ends up being a very sad day for Glenavon. And I think a bit of a killer blow and a pin in the balloon of the ever so small chances of the Mourneview miracle.
Yeah, the form that Glenavon have been in since Michael O'Connor took over is what they needed to have. The first game was home to Carrick. If you're going to have any chance of survival, you got to win that home game against Carrick. The Glentoran game is a bit of an anomaly. Brilliant result for them. Brilliant performance, well deserved. And then again, If you're going to do anything, you need to be winning against Ballymena at home, and Bangor at home is probably in that bracket as well. They go 1-0 up, and they're such a confidence team, Glenavon, this season. When they go behind, you don't know if they're ever going to come back, and they go ahead and they look a totally different team, and they did in that spell after going 1-0 up very early on. And it's hard to exactly pinpoint where it went wrong. Was it Peter Campbell going off? He's the one player in their team that you always think you want him on the ball. So once you lose that, yeah, it is a blow. Or was it the equaliser? And again, it's that concede a goal, confidence dips big time. But there's also an element of feeling hard done by. And much as you can say that you've got to try and put that out of your head and things like that in football, it's not quite as simple as that. And they did feel hard done by, and rightly so, I think, with the penalty. I thought it was nowhere near a penalty. And
I am definitely in the minority here. I thought he made enough contact with the player that it's a penalty. I understand people disagree with this. I get it, but I can see it.
if I'm the manager and that's my goalkeeper, he done exactly what I wanted him to do. You come out, you punch the ball, get the ball cleared, and whatever else is in and around you, that's just consequential. And I don't
But
think
if you're there trying to head the ball out of the way and someone's going there and you run into the back of the attacker with your arm and you push him out of the way quite vigorously, and it's your body that is moving him out of the way, surely that's a penalty, no?
well, I don't know what Mark Byrne is expected to do. His arms are up, punching the ball. It's not his arms, hands, elbows, anything that makes contact with the player. To me, it was just body to body. It's interesting if you look back at the replay, the referee's positioning for it.
It's blocked by the keeper. Yes, Glenavon
No,
fans were saying this Saturday.
it's blocked by a Bangor player. So I'm not sure exactly how much of it the referee could see.
There was a decent thwack, I would say,
And
in the ground, wasn't there?
I thought it was just very, very harsh.
The way I've described it to people, and I've showed it to people who aren't really Irish League fans and people who are Irish League fans, and everybody thinks nonsense, that shouldn't have been a penalty. But I don't mind being in the minority here. I will admit this: I would be raging if that was against me. Absolutely raging. And
Yeah. Well, what I would say is, if it's not given, are we still talking about it? Because there's plenty of other penalty incidents when they're not given, you're still talking about them 2 days later.
but that's why
This
that's
one,
why we have the little word
one we wouldn't be.
stonewall. That's
Yeah.
there's plenty of times you go, I think that's a penalty, and I think the technicality that would be a penalty. Look, there's another shout that I don't think many people have seen because I don't believe it's on any highlights out there, which we'll get to. But that really stunk out the place at Mournview, because after such a nice start, Peter Campbell going off, and now they're 1-1 out of complete nowhere. Bangor were rubbish for the first 30 minutes. Glenavon aren't really able to pick themselves together, and then that second goal that Bangor get is out of nothing. It's out of a bad bounce coming off someone, and Morgan's just been able to beat the man, and then no one's tracking. And this is the defensive frailties of Glenavon. It's why they're the bottom worst team in the league. He's able to pick up and get there, and with very little actual possession, attacks, shots on target to really have by their name. Bangor are 2-1 up going in at half time, and Glenavon fans are thinking, what is going on? It's hard for us this season to do anything, and we've done okay there in that half. And let's talk about why I like their first half of Glenavon. We're talking about young players there. McGovern's good. He's slightly limited in the fact that he is small, but he moves about and he's got plenty of energy. And you had Corey Smith on one side of the three and Peter Campbell on the other. And for, like I said, first 20 minutes, Bangor couldn't handle it. And then Jack Malone, a player who I've seen shine, I've seen somewhat fall to the background a bit. Excellent performance from him on Saturday. I was looking through that Glenavon team and I thought, a couple of players here are going to be really, really well sought after assets if they were to go down. Jack Malone and Corey Smith, I would now put in the same bracket as Peter Campbell and McGovern.
I would actually give a bit of credit as well to young Oran Kearney
Yeah,
on Saturday. That was the best game I'd seen him play, because he'd moved into a more central role, and he obviously put the cross in for the goal. But overall, I thought he played very, very
he
well.
he played as
Give
a bit
him
of
credit.
a running number six, I'd say, kind of.
Yeah, and the problem for Glenavon was, and Michael talked about it then after the game, that they've got plenty of possession in that game, but no punch up front
No,
because he doesn't have an out and out centre forward at the minute. He's just lost David McDade, and it looks like he's
Michael
lost Michael
O'Connor,
O'Connor as well. Although officially he hasn't, but unofficially it does look like he's played
his last game.
probably his last game for the club. And again, we talk about Cliftonville. If they lose the two centre halves, any team that loses two centre forwards, especially when they only really have two centre forwards, Glenavon don't really have an awful lot else available up front. Um, they're going to struggle, and they've got a couple of games, 2-3 games now before January before they can get anyone in. And when you're already struggling to score goals, if you don't have a centre forward, that just makes it even more difficult. But it probably does fast track then Aaron Prendergast coming back
Yes,
in January.
and I mean, clearly they are lacking quality, right, where they are. But I looked at that game on Saturday and I thought, so they have Corey Smith, Campbell, and McGovern there, and they were doing bits who I think would really cause trouble against most bottom six sides. I was thinking, here we could be on here 1-0 up, probably should be 2 or 3 up. Maybe this Glenavon team are going to start singing. But as soon as Campbell went off, it was Josh Key was brought on. He's not a winger. And then you have who's the alternative to McGovern, or who's going to maybe give Corey Smith a break. They're just lacking numbers, aren't they? They're lacking players in positions of need high up the pitch, and that would have been McDade, that would have been O'Connor, and they'll be searching now for just Prendergast, not because he is going to come in and be a massive difference maker based on what he's done in the championship for a season and a half, but just they need someone who can impact the game at the top end of the pitch rather than trying to push a midfielder or somebody like that to try and play in wide positions. But look, they admitted at the end of the game, Lee Feeney, when he was on the radio, sat beside me. They got out of dodge there. They didn't play great, but they hung deep and they got the 3 points, and that's a really important 3 points for them because it holds back Glenavon, as we've said before, 9 points now, 7 off Carrick, and all these teams have played less games than them. 8 points off Cruise, 11 points off of Ballymena, but 13 off Portadown. But Bangor are now 15 points off them. It was 12 beforehand. Clearly, if they lost that, it was down to 9. Massive swing. And look, Bangor aren't out of dodge when it comes to 11th. And they're not technically out of dodge when it comes to 12th either. But a required win off the back of many games in the league where, as much as they've done okay, they just haven't been getting 3 points.
It was big as well in the fact that Bangor have now gone to Glenavon twice this season and won. And if they are to be a relegation rival, when you've already won twice at their place, it's pretty huge. Because like you say, that swing, it's almost 12 points, isn't it, rather than 6. So they've got that gap now. Was it 15 points? Are Glenavon going to win 5 more games than Bangor in the rest of the season? I would find it very unlikely. So Lee's not going to go down the road of saying that Bangor are safe. He's much too smart for that, but they're probably not looking over their shoulder a great deal at that. Yes, Carrick are a lot closer, but again, they're gonna have to win 3-4 more games than Bangor between now and the end of the season as well, if they're going to catch them.
Yeah, I agree. That's an interesting matchup between those two when it comes to head. I think a bit of the glamour is lost from Bangor. I looked at that side and thought, outside of Arthur's, there wasn't really much on offer there, and they really relied on that penalty, and they were sitting deep and deep. I talked about in the radio, base second pair of eyes for me. There was a second call. And it was McMullen who was up for Glenavon, and he was fouled what looked to be right on the line of the penalty box, and Mornview erupted in frustration when Shane Andrews said it was a free kick. He didn't point to the spot, he got the white foam out. I'm not saying it was 100% in the box, but Glam fans just thought nothing was going their way on Saturday.
I would love to see the replay of it. No one's made it available. I hope Shane Andrews got that right, because if he didn't, it's a big sign that the officials don't work together, because it happened on right in front of the linesman on that side. So if it had been inside, I would like to think that the assistant referee has seen that and should be then telling the referee that was inside, because he will have had a much better view than Shane Andrews had. And I don't think the officials do work together, and they certainly don't work together well enough. I go back to last season when Glenavon played Armagh City in the League Cup. Tim Marshall gave a penalty for Glenavon, and there was virtually no one in the ground other than him thought it was a penalty. Between the fourth official, the referee, he was told it wasn't a penalty. It was a great challenge in the box, and he overturned it. And when we're in a league that doesn't have VAR, that has to happen. It has to happen more with the officials. We've got 4 sets of eyes, and they've all got to come to the right decision if someone has seen the proper way of it when the referee hasn't. And if that incident on Saturday was inside the box, it's a terrible mistake when it's happened so close to the assistant referee. And we don't want these things happening. We want the right thing happening. That's why VAR was brought in. We want to come to the right decisions, albeit it's not perfect by any stretch of imagination.
But that is the type of decision.
Yeah, and a lot of us, and I would be in that camp, don't really want VAR coming in the Irish League, because I go to England and watch matches. I go to Windsor Park for the internationals, and then when VAR gets involved, it just takes the excitement and the emotion and the passion out of it. Whereas the Irish League, this is what it is. It's raw, but we still want the right decisions to be made. But we would rather have them made by humans. And listen, we've all experienced human error, and I can forgive human error, provided it's an honest mistake, a genuine mistake. But if one person has seen one thing and one person has seen something else, you've got to go with the person that's had the best view. And I really hope that incident was outside the box, because if it was inside the box and it's cost Glenavon possibly getting back into that game, it's poor.
In turn, it's good to see the referee, if both decisions were correct and you saw them back and you judged it, it's good to see that they've went for it, because you'd rather than, because it would have been very easy to go give them the penalty back because the other one was controversial and it's all even up and everybody stops complaining. You have to see what you see and judge every decision regardless of what you saw before. We'll wrap up these week's games. Carrick took the lead, aren't able to hold on to it, and Coleraine, despite not having a totally clean game against Carrick in the form of they're going against one of the weaker teams in the division and they're shaking a wee bit. They give Carrick their 4th loss in a row in the league, and gives them their 2nd on the bounce. It takes them up to 1st again, but they've got 2 games more played than Larne, and it's only on goal difference. They kind of needed this, and I think Coleraine, will not panic about going behind here, but there's still a few shakiness within this side. They just don't look the kind of dominant Coleraine that we saw maybe in September, October time.
At half time on Saturday, when Cliftonville and Carrick were both ahead, I commented to a colleague, "This league is bonkers." and as much as there was a turnaround in both games, it is. Coleraine have been very good when I've seen them, and I've also seen them have to grind out a win against 10 men at Portadown. And I'm just wondering, is it that little bit of experience of a title race and knowing how to play and what you need to do as a front runner that maybe is lacking a little bit. I'm not saying that's going to cost them, because they do have a player like Joel Cooper who has been there and done it. But at the minute, that's kind of what it looks a little bit like. Again, they've got quality, and maybe that quality will make up for that further down the line. That obviously remains to be seen. It wasn't really much of a surprise that they did then come back against Carrick. I think what you probably find is that even these top teams, that they may go behind in games, but come probably the final 15 minutes, they probably come on strong, and they get the job done, which is what Coleraine did. And it wouldn't surprise me if that is a pattern further down the line. When they're playing the teams in and around the bottom, that they'll hold their own for a period. But ultimately, the stronger, better team higher up the league will win, which is possibly what happened at Shamrock Park that day as well, even against the 10 men.
6 games this weekend. As usual, Crews and Cliftonville play on a Tuesday night, and for a majority of you, that's already happened. So let that sit there and ignore the fact that one team got 5 players sent off, and that's why they can't win the game on Saturday. Friday night, Coleraine against Bangor. Bangor go up to Coleraine. I think this is a very simple result for me. Maybe earlier on in the season you might say, oh, could Bangor shock it? I don't think they will. I think Coleraine, or at least Coleraine, should stretch the muscles, and they should beat this team. I think it's 3-0.
I think it'll go with form and with favourites tag. I would go with Coleraine to win it, but I wouldn't expect them to get it easy. Having seen Bangor quite a few times this season, they do make it tough for you, but I think Coleraine ultimately will come out, because just like I've said, the stronger teams ultimately just get the better of the arm wrestle.
And there's no feeling out, I think, in this game, because Bangor will slow it down. I mean, Bangor was slowing it down against Glentoran. It felt like 5 minutes before half time. So they play their backline and midfield deep when they want to get a result. They'll take a draw straight away. So unless Coleraine start really stretching them at the back from earlier on, they could be panicking with 35 minutes to go, because Bangor are just going to sit tight and head everything away. Because if there's one thing about that Bangor side, they're big and they're physical, and if it's a bit chilly, it's a bit windy, that's not going to help the flair players of Coleraine. But I think they'll get it through. In fact, they won a wee bit rough and ready against Carrick. You just don't want a similar setup, where as much as they got out of jail against Carrick, you don't want a similar setup against Bangor. Larne, Glentoran, this could be a bore, but I also think Larne should be able to win 2-0. I think they'll stretch that quite brittle back line, and it might be late with Lusty running on behind, leaving a Glentoran player in their wake. But I think between O'Connor and co, they'll be able to turn the screw and get the goals to win this game against Glentoran 2-0.
I can see it being a carbon copy possibly of last Friday night against Linfield. It's a difficult one to call. Like I said, Glentoran had been on a little bit of a patchy run, but that second half comeback on Saturday could be the catalyst to maybe get them back on the track again.
We move to Saturday, and I'm going to go actually the game which I think is the most intriguing. Portadown, Ballymena. Here is Ballymena with their brand new boss, Oran Kearney, going to Shamrock Park, where it's probably not as much of a fortress as football people like you and I may call it, as it was last year. But they have the momentum of beating Carrick. They had a decent first half against Cliftonville the week before. They thumped Crusaders. You got to keep up that intensity. You got to keep up that focus, you might say. But that's what Ballymena will likely be. It's probably a 1-1, I would say here, which maybe suits both sides. But if you're either one, you'd think, time to get a win here and really solidify our place in the table.
Ballymena are going to be the great unknown going into this weekend. We all know what their team is, their players. But is it going to be the same shape? Is Oran going to go and put a stamp on it straight away, or is he just going to sort of ease himself in and have very much a Jim Irvin stroke Kieran Caldwell type setup? I do believe that Kieran Caldwell's setup was a little bit different from Jim's, which maybe helped him beat Larne. I would suggest that first goal wins this. If Ballymena win, or sorry, Ballymena score first, then everyone's up excited. Oh, they're thinking they've got the new manager bounce, and they'll maybe just tighten up then and see it through. Whereas if Portadown were to get the first goal, it's maybe that confidence, which is a little bit brittle at the minute at Ballymena. And Portadown can maybe capitalise on that. So I think 1-0 either way, quite possibly.
1-1 is the way it's going to go. They faced off. I mean, this could be a difficult couple of days for the Crews. They faced off against Linfield there last week or so, quite recently. Linfield at home, despite all their huff and puffing and their struggles, I think they'll be able to take care of business against the Crews. Don't see a shock here, albeit the Crews definitely up their ante against the Blues in recent times. Rarely a high-scoring game, so I'm going to give it... I'll be kind, I'll go 2-1 Linfield, but I don't really believe it.
You could get a bit of a reaction from Crusaders, given the way Declan Cadell spoke on after the match on Saturday. Declan's...
Did you hear him getting quite antsy about the idea that he's under pressure?
I think there's credit in the bank there, and he's been around long enough at that club. There's not going to be any sort of knee-jerk reactions from boards or anything like that down there. He's quite a measured guy, Declan. And I think he knows what he's doing there in the long term. So for him to speak like he did on Saturday was a little bit of a surprise. But at the same time, he's probably not the type that's going to say anything other than the truth, because then that would just make him look a bit stupid. If they haven't played well, he will admit it. So it depends how the players react, and they may get a bit of a jolt from what he said. But I still think Linfield at home just too strong. Much as they drew a blank down at Larne, they still have goal scorers in the team even without Offord. So I would expect them to win the game.
Yeah, no, I get it. Managers don't like to be told that some people believe they might be under pressure. They can get quite annoyed about that. But interesting response. I don't see it myself either. Again, it probably highlights the fact that there maybe isn't anybody on the sidelines. You think, oh, they could be the man to come in and do things. It's clearly a project there at Crusaders, and despite where they're sitting in the table, was it a million miles away from where they expected? And it's just the situation they're set up in with the lack of experienced players that have been put into that side, and maybe I'm not going to say lack of investment, but as in, they haven't broken the bank to try and get anybody, and maybe you just have to live with that when it comes to recruitment. We are seeing more than ever teams are living and dying by their recruitment. Carrick against the Swifts. As much as this game's usually closer than expected, because Dungannon find it difficult to really break down teams who sit really, really deep. I think they'll continue on. No, actually, I disagree. I think it's going to be 1-1.
I'm going for an away win. I think Dungannon are just on a little bit of a run at the minute. And if they can go to Ballymena and get a win, they can do the same at Carrick. I think they'll have too much.
And then finally, Cliftonville, Glenavon. I don't think this is going to be a thriller, and I don't think Glenavon away from home is going to have enough juice, especially if Peter Campbell is not able to play in this one. Might be a bit of a bore, but I think it'll be 1-0 Cliftonville.
Yeah, I'll be going for Cliftonville in this one as well. They're the form team in the league. They're not giving up a massive amount defensively, which means they don't have to score too many to win a game. And Glenavon aren't really offering a whole lot up front. Like we said earlier, they don't have strikers, and unless Michael can somehow unearth an out-of-contract player, I don't imagine there's too many out-of-contract strikers on the go. But unless he can magic something up in the next couple of days, they're going to struggle to have anything between now and January. So I don't see them having enough firepower to cause Cliftonville any problems. They've got a really tough run coming up as well. Glenavon with Cliftonville, Linfield, and then the Boxing Day derby. Form does go out the window. It's a cliche, but it's true. Anything could happen in that game. Then they've got Dungannon and away to Ballymena. In the next 6 games, that'll take them up to 24 matches played. If they can stay 7 points back, and having the teams above them to play at that stage, including after the split, I think they've got a glimmer of a chance. But if it becomes any more than 7 points over this next little spell, I think Glenavon could be in big danger, or bigger danger than they already are.
Yeah, I've highlighted that game against Portadown at Boxing Day as a key matchup. Again, it could have been a massive swap round if they had won and Ports had lost on Saturday. But I think come 2026, we could be staring down the barrel. It was always going to be a difficult situation for Glenavon, but we'll just see how it all wraps up over the next while. Once again, Stuart, a delight to have you on. Thank you so much for coming in, chatting Irish League, chatting manager chat, and on all the rest. I'm sure it'll be a busy time for you as it is, like many people in your footballing media field over Christmas. Do you have your Boxing Day and 30th, because you don't have New Year's Day anymore? Do you have your 30th of December assignments?
Yes, it'll be the Mid-Ulster Derby on Boxing Day. That's traditional for myself for a long, long time. And then Glenavon Dungannon on the 30th. So two interesting matchups, two local games, and pivotal possibly for Glenavon in terms of what they go on and do the rest of the season. Very
much so. Stuart, thank you very much for jumping on the podcast. Enjoy your week. Good luck with any Christmas presents you haven't got. And tally ho.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. It's great coming on because you double the fee every time we're on.
That's it. What's nothing times two again?
Yeah, exactly.
All the best.
All the best. Thanks, Peter.
If you've been listening to this podcast since podcast 1, the very first one, thank you. That's very nice of you. If you haven't, no worries. But if you have happened to listen to that first one, you've listened to every single one since, you can obviously go back and listen to the first one if you want, and then listen to this one, but you're not going to. You've now listened today to podcast 100 and, it's a biggie, 149, which means, all going well, podcast 150. It's a big one next week. It's not fun. So if I'm here and you're here, we're going to celebrate. It's going to be a good one. And it means you don't want to miss it. So what you got to do is, whether you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, go to the main page of it, which has Kick a Match on it, and hit subscribe. Hit follow. It's free. It's easy. You join a big club of hundreds of people, and it means you get a little bump, little notification to let you know if and when I put up the big one. Well, the big one between the end of the year. There's lots of ones that are coming your way. A lot of specials coming your way before How Long Zaya Sang in 2026 is here. But we thank you because a few of you tagged me in this, and that was the Spotify rap thing. Another good year for Pete and Kick a Match. Growth, not that you care. Growth's up. Boom. The amount of people that I'm like a top 10, top 5, top 1 podcast, it's up. It's huge. I can't believe that where it was and where it is now, and for some reason I'm still here. So thank you. Let's hope Kick a Match 150 happens. I'll be in. It should. See you next week for the big one. 150. Kisses.